Hi there. On websites, you can always see lots of different forms. For example, forms for subscribing to newsletters, contact us forms, and also forms that help you search the website. Let's go to the website ebay.com, and there we can find forms where you can sign in and register. For example, if we go to the online store walmart.com, on the left side you will find boxes that you can check. Here you can find the same kind of text forms. Here we have radio buttons, where you can select only one option and so on. So how do you do this in HTML? In HTML, there's a special tag used to create forms. It's called the form tag. And in this tag, we place special elements for input. So let's write a form tag. But what should we write in it? We can add several tags at once. The first one is called input. This tag is always used with an attribute called type. The type attribute is very important because the input type of our form depends on the value of this attribute. What do I mean? Well, let's take a look. First, we create an input tag which we will wrap in a p tag. Notice that the input tag isn't paired, meaning it doesn't have an end tag. As for the value for type in the input tag, we will write text. Let's see what we got so far. As we can see, here we have a text form. Let's create another input tag in another p tag. This time, we'll set the value of the type attribute to checkbox. As you can see, we've got a box that we can check. Let's create a heading before the input checkbox. For example, color. Now let's add some text next to our checkbox. Let's go with blue. Now let's copy this checkbox and create another one. This time we will write white as the text. We save it, refresh, and we see that we have options. We can choose the first one, the second one, both, or neither. And also, we have switches. That's when you don't have squares, but circles. Do you remember? It's also an input, but in this example, it will be the type radio. While we're on the topic, let's create a country of delivery form. We'll add a heading labeled Country of Delivery. Here we will write, let's say, Germany. And here we'll create another radio button option labeled USA. Let's save it and refresh the page. Here we can see two radio buttons. But this type of input, meaning a radio button, must include an attribute that indicates what group of radio buttons it belongs to. This attribute is called a name. So for this attribute, you need to write a name, which is going to be the same for any button in the group. Let's write name country. And let's do the same for our second radio button. Let's check. As we can see, it works just fine. By the way, in the text field you typically write a hint for the user, meaning what they are supposed to enter. To add such text, there's a special attribute called placeholder. As the value for this attribute, you write the text that you want to appear as a hint in the text box. So for our placeholder, let's write, for example, name, and save it. Now in the input field, it says name. If I click and start typing something, it disappears. And if I delete my text, it appears again. Done. To create a button that will allow us to submit the inputted information, you just add another input tag where attribute type equals submit. So let's create one. The button's going to have some text displayed on it by default. But to choose your own text to be displayed on the button, you need to use an attribute called value. Let's write, for example, value send. Now you can see a button on the page that says send, and you can click it if you want. So that's done. Okay, so as we just learned, with the input tag, we can create various types of forms depending on the value we set for the type attribute. But the values we discussed so far, the checkbox, a radio button, and so on, are definitely not the only ones. There are a lot of them. This table here contains all the values that you can set for the type attribute that were added before HTML5. And then in this table, you can see the values that appeared with HTML5. As you can see, the list is pretty long. Each value has its own attributes. The last element that we're going to talk about is a drop-down list, where you can select one option among several listed. To create such a list, you actually need to use a select tag instead of an input tag. Unlike the input tag, the select tag is paired. To specify the items that you want in the list, you need another tag called option within the select tag, and the option tag needs to be paired. As you can see, this tag is similar to the ordered and unordered list we discussed before. But in this example, we write select instead of OL or UL, and option instead of LI. Let's try it. We're going to write select before our submit button. Let's create two options. For example, we can have a choice between two types of material, metal or plastic. Let's add a heading labeled material. Save it. As you can see, we've got ourselves a drop-down list. And when we click it, we can choose one of the two options. Okay, so we've only discussed a fraction of the possible form items. There are way more than what we covered. By the way, here are a few more examples for you. Take a look at them by yourself. If you want to get a more complete picture, I recommend you check out the materials on W3Schools, which you can do by following the link you see on the screen. There you will find more information about forms. That's it, guys. See you. Bye-bye.